Hello, my name is Marguerite Horner. I'm here at the viewing room where I'm exhibiting these two watercolours, and my friend Kaori Homma, who teaches at Central St Martin's, has come to see me and asked me some questions about it. So, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'm really, really excited to see Marguerite's work, for quite a long time during the lockdown. I've been following Marguerite on Instagram, lots of beautiful pictures, but to see it in flesh, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, but there's a quite big departure from previous series, of the street scenes and so this is quite amazing. Kind of vantage point is quite high up, and the distance figures. That's it's quite new development. So if you could tell me,
how it came about. Well, I did this residency in China, which introduced me to doing more landscapes. Because they took us to the most beautiful places on this residency for 2 weeks in China, and then I did the paintings afterwards. And in fact, the curator of the show, Sandra Higgins, she said, "Oh, I see you're doing landscapes," and she did another show that was called Shades of Green. Of course, I only work in monochrome with a little bit of colour, actually, sometimes, and so. All my work comes from my own experience. I'm not actually intent to be kind of pigeonholed into, oh, she just does streets or she just does portraits. It's all to do with what I'm triggered by an experience, which then triggers something in my internal landscape, my internal world, and it's projected onto the external world. And I use a quote in my statement from Jung that the only equivalent of the universe within is the universe without. And when I read that, I think, well, this kind of validates my leanings to what I want to do anyway. So I was visiting my daughter who lives in LA, and I did this trip from Del Mar, down to Del Mar from Beechwood Canyon where she lived, from a train. And in fact, a lot of my previous work, again, it's in that liminal space when you're traveling from one place to another. You're no longer in your domestic situation thinking of all the things you want things about on every day. You're kind of let off into a place where your imagination can be relaxed, and that's when the work tends to come to me. So this body of work came about when I was visiting my daughter in LA, and she lived in Beechwood Canyon, and I was going on the train down to see some friends in Del Mar, and of course that gives it the height, and in fact an awful lot of my other work comes from a similar experience, and the height when you're looking down, it gives you, I suppose, a wider perspective, and then with the images, which I take a long time editing and maybe cropping it to get to something that feels right. It's a very intuitive process for me. And then once I have what I want, I then proceed to do the work. But it takes a long time, that preliminary work. The actual doing of the work I do, especially with watercolour, I have to be incredibly disciplined, because all the white in here is the paper. So I have to map out everything that is white, and then I do very carefully, I do maybe up to 3 washes to go over it. So I want the luminosity of the paper to shine through the actual pigment. And the same with my oil paintings, I do a very similar thing. I use washes which are over and keeping the canvas white, and trying very hard not to add white.
So for the viewers, from the other side of the camera, may not be able to see it, but it's that luminosity is incredible. That white bit. If you don't know anything about art, you would think somehow that is actually light behind, or something added. So to find out that it's actually the paper surface.
Yes.
It's actually quite astonishing. Yes. It's amazing. Yeah.
And especially here, I don't know if I've done it on this particular one, but in the past, if I've added too much, what I do is I will take the paper away with a knife, and so that's how I managed to get. No, I don't think I have done here. I haven't done here at all. I've just left it maybe added more, left more white and then added more dark on top.
Talking about light, so this is actually really prominent for this, I think, series. Bright, luminous light, coming shining, and you talked about this work somehow resonate with your life, and and I've sort of seen a lot of work that I've seen before, had a kind of quite London light, they kind muted light, where this one's actually really sort of shiny, bright.
Well, the thing about California and this particular part when you're outside of LA is there is a clarity of light that you don't get in London or this Northern Hemisphere. And I was reading a book by Celia Paul, and she was, her gallery, I think Victoria Miro, brought her over to LA. And in this book, she's talking about the clarity of light. And I was reading this thinking, God, that's exactly what I felt. These little people are just like spot on. I mean, there's no haziness there. And it's what kind of, you're looking at it and you're just thinking, it's awesome. That's what I'd say, it's awesome. And I think when I was doing more of this work, I did try some in oils on canvas, and the oils on canvas did not have the luminosity. I'm going to try again and make more attempts to maybe do a different ground, because I would like to be able to do them in oil on paint. But the word numinous came to my mind, and I actually didn't know what it meant. And my son had done philosophy, and he said, well, that's a word made up by a guy called Adolf Otto. I think his name's Adolf Otto, I've got it somewhere there. Yes, have I got it there? Designed, it's a Latin phrase. There's Rudolf Otto. So he'd written this book called, it was called The Idea of the Holy. Now, of course, with semantics, what we would think to be holy now would be, well, it is kind of religious, but he's talking about the primitive idea that there's more than just us, more than just the material. And when you see these things, when you see this and sunsets, you're kind of taken out of yourself, and you're kind of allowed to reflect and taken out of your worry or your anxiety. You're given a kind of holiday. But in that, you kind of find yourself as well, like meditation, I guess. You meditate on those things. And so that's what I was aiming for, to give that sense of the numinous. And I'm working on a whole series of these now for a solo show, because they have this. I want to capture this, and I want to share this through paint, this idea inside your head that you have. And obviously we've all got different ideas in our head, but when you put it on canvas and paint, it's very exact. You can talk about it, you can use words, but what's in your head when I say a word is never going to be the same as what's in my head. But it's very precise if you put it on a piece of paper, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think actually, again, without knowing, what went on in your life that period when you're actually painting this, and but when you talked about that idea of otherness and space, you could feel it. You can actually enter into the world, which is basically not suffocating, and it's. This is why I'm quite interested. Yeah. So this is done in 2022. Yeah. So that's just sort of immediately after the lockdown period. Where things are suffocating, and so there's a feeling of maybe release, or
I had a show at this Chelsea Arts Club where I had 14 of these, and they all sold immediately. And Frances Morris, who at the time, and she's since retired from, is it Tate Britain or Tate Modern, and she I was talking about it, and I said, actually, I thought it may not be obvious, but after lockdown you get this sense of you're allowed to go out into the world. She said, of course. I mean, she saw immediately that this whole series was that being released from the confines of our home and our heads.
Yeah, but I also see there's a little bit more than that. You know, not just about the the lockdown finished and you were able to put a party, but there's something a little bit more than that. And
what you mean to do with my inner life?
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of in that state of wondering where my work what direction it would take. And I got very excited when my friends in Del Mar, they took me to the seaside, which is where a lot of these were, from a very high up. I just thinking, wow, this is amazing. I mean, some of them, the images I took were probably, I edited them close in, because you know when you're looking at something, you know what you're looking at. You're not looking at the whole thing, and so the cropping kind of brings it down to what it is, and you move around with the composition. For me, it's until it just feels right, in a way. And the higher reason of why you're doing it often comes afterwards. I just work and you suddenly think, why did I do what? But you know that you want to do that.
Yeah.
So I find it very hard if someone says, can you do so and so? I can't do it with the same intention as when I'm compelled myself to do it.
I totally understand that. I think the difference between, say, like, designer who's designing something to communicate, luminosity, to the artist, so I feel there's a kind of sense of discovery that obviously took place, for you to get to that point, and so it's sort of really quite, curious, but also excited to see that transition, that happening in your sort of journey, as it were, as an artist.
Yes, I felt very uncertain actually. Even though I'd sold some, I still felt I'm dealing with with the sky and the sea and everything that can in some look a bit cheesy, and this is what I was uncertain about. Will I be kind of put into that or be perceived in that way? But who was it? Somebody said that there's nothing like that. I forget who said it. And they said it with such authority, it gave me encouragement to not worry about how others perceive it. Just follow this compulsion to do it. And they're not easy at all to do. I mean, they take as long as, say, an oil painting, because what you're doing is you're mapping it out, and you're having to just take your time. So it can take over quite a long period of time before you get it right. So, is there anything else you'd like to ask me?
Well, there's hundreds of things, but thank you so much for standing with me and looking at this new series. I'm actually really honoured.
Thanks for your encouragement. I appreciate it. And thank you for watching.